The most important part to any zoo is the animals in the enclosures they call home. Throughout the series, I'll be designing different enclosures for an array of animals, whilst also keeping guest interaction at the forefront of every build. Join me each week as I tackle a new enclosure and idea and try and bring it to life within Planet Zoo. Today I'm building a tiger enclosure and it's going to occupy the space here behind the capybaras. Whilst my idea is a bit all over the place, my plan is to have a walkthrough for guests and a high up point for the tigers to see out over their enclosure. Here are the stats, and these are for the Bengal tiger. As you can see, there's a large land requirement, not so much the water or the climbing, even though I have got these aspects in the enclosure. And on here on the screen you'll see the social structures. Obviously they're not very large groups, and you only sort of have 1 to 2 per enclosure. Starting off the build here with this back wall, I do use this all the way around, and I do realise it is a lot of breeze block wall and it's quite plain, so I do try my best to theme this up. But there is some little gaps here in the wall because there'll be some nice little bay viewpoints for guests to see the tigers. The other gap I've just made here in the wall is for the guest walkthrough. Now originally it was going to be a walk in and walk back out, but this later changed to a full sort of right angle into the enclosure. You can see on screen now that I'm doing those bay windows, and I realised that they were quite big, so I decided instantly to theme them up with some wood pieces along the bottom and get the roof in. I'm now here at the back of the enclosure where I'm building the tiger shelter. I do actually add like a little keeper kitchen area, but this later changes and I get rid of that. Here is that theming going in, and this follows all the way around the enclosure, which you'll see towards the end of the build. I'm aware the start of this build has been a bit all over the place. It has been a while since I last built in this game, so I was going off this on just sort of memory, what I had planned from before. And as you can see, this is the walkthrough. Now this does go through many iterations. I did want it wider, but the glass panel pieces, I really like those curved arches. It worked really well. And as I was building this, this is where I realised it would look really good to have that space there between the 2 tunnels as a higher up point for the tigers to get a good view over their enclosure. Now all that was left to do was to enclose this space and how best to do it. So I used these roof pieces here, and as you can see I'm not really sure on it, and this is where it goes through many iterations, and it's just trying to enclose the space as best as possible. After moving the ramp several times, I've finally set on design I'm happy with, and I changed those curved pieces in the end, so it was just one little archway over, which you can see on your screens now. Here came the fun bit, trying to theme this up, and I wanted to keep it quite concrete based, but I wanted a sort of Asia style feel. So you'll see sort of different colours onto this platform here, just so it doesn't look all too grey. Here comes that colour, and I knew I wasn't going to get trees to work on this space because it's so high up and I didn't want it dominating the skyline in the zoo. So I just stuck with these fake trees just to add a bit of greenery. I did look into putting some rock works in, but that later didn't happen, and I just raised the ground up and placed some plants. Now came the fun bit. To get this enclosure right, I knew I need to put the fence in to get the tiger in, and here I am putting in the knoll barriers all the way around the enclosure, and the tiger is on its way in shortly. The tiger now in, I really wanted to fill this space because it was looking very empty and bland. So I let the tiger roam around a little bit, and first of all it did use that ramp, which I was really happy with. Here comes the fun bit, trying to get the texture right. I realised that it needed a lot of soil in the end, much more than I expected, so what I was doing here just wasn't enough. I do later add plenty of trees because they do need that foliage for cover, and then later on in the build you'll see I do add some theming pieces just to add that pop of colour to the space. One thing I do love adding to these enclosures is climbing frames. They're brilliant for the space, and obviously it gives the tiger another vantage point over the enclosure. You can also see I've added a lake there in the middle. This is just to give the tiger something to walk around, and also if they want to go for a little swim. One thing I did try to ease off with on this enclosure is the rock work, but I did make sure there was lots of uneven terrain in this enclosure because I didn't want it all to be flat for the tiger. With the outside of the enclosure nearing completion, I thought it was time to work on the inside. So here is where the food and water station will be, as well as the bedding. And as you can see, that keeper area has gone. I didn't feel like it was necessary with that space opposite being for keepers anyway. Here are some few additions here at the water. Now, looking at the enclosure overall, I realised there was a lot of wall, like I said. So I wanted to open up this space in the wall here and put in some high electric fences, just so it felt very open and that you wasn't always behind glass when viewing the tigers. And I feel like this space worked out really well and broke up that long concrete wall all the way around the enclosure. Next came a really fun part, which was putting in the path in. This was quite fiddly in these little bay areas here on the enclosure, and trying to connect it all up so that it wasn't so square to the rest of the zoo was also a challenge. Because this was an untouched area of the zoo, there was no paths, so it was like starting fresh, and I did have to keep moving the paths so they were as close to the fence as possible so guests could get the best possible view. Doing a little overview of the enclosure, I realised there could have been some theming, so this is where I started to add that Asia theme. Wasn't quite sure where I was going with it, but I really liked the pop of red, and I did add some theming in some very different places, like here above the tiger house. It's not necessarily noticeable to guests, but I thought it was quite a nice addition. I was desperately trying to fill in these spaces here, but it wasn't quite working, so I just used theming pieces elsewhere, especially these archways. Overall, I'm really happy with this build. I think it was a bit all over the place. I think because it's been a while for me whilst I have built an enclosure, so to come back to all this was quite a challenge, and I think I threw myself into quite a large enclosure quite quickly. I think if I kept it to a small one, it definitely would have been easier, but overall I really enjoyed the build and it's turned out really well.